Hi everyone, it's Miss M and welcome in. So I know a lot of you have your paper coming up, so I'm going live and I'm doing a couple study sessions. Pop in if you have questions. I'll see them, I'll try to answer them, and if one of my kids wakes up, then I gotta go. But I am yours until that happens, okay? So this is for A Psychology 9990, paper 1. So we are going over the 12 research articles. This study, this has all the studies in it and research methods in it, okay? So I guess what I'm going to start off by saying is, when you start your exam, okay, when the very first thing that you should do is go all the way to the very last question, okay? Do the very last question first and work your way backwards in the test, so to speak, okay? You don't Once you get to the middle of the exam, you'll have, like, let's say question 7A and 7B, okay? Make sure that you always do A before B. But if you can go all the way back, let's see, do I have a paper right now? Go all the way back to the very last question. Okay, and the very last question is going to be worth, you might have an 8-point question, then a 10-point question. Anyway, that 10-point question, go ahead and try to do your evaluation first, okay? Research in this study, okay? So we're doing psychological statistics on passing rates of this, okay? Those who start from the back first and work their way to the front have a higher chance of passing. And that's because in general, we tend to overwrite when we have plenty of time on our hands. And what we see is that kids are overwriting in the first couple questions, which are all like 2-point questions. And then by the time you get to this 10-point question at the end, you know, you run out of time, you run out of fuel, and that's one question for 10 points. Okay, so that's very valuable. Hi, everyone. Can you guys hear me okay? Hi, guys. What is most expected? Okay. I think the problem that a lot of kids run into in answering these questions is they're not providing a complete answer. Okay. And I've gone over P in a couple of videos, PEE. And so if you haven't studied these command words, okay, this is in the syllabus. So these command words, basically they give you a list of words that starts a question and it tells you how to answer it. So for example, if a question says to explain something, you need to give clear reason or make reasons for, indicate how or why something is happening, give reasons behind theories. Okay, so they're looking for that in a majority of your questions. But if you cannot think clearly and you're like, oh my gosh, how do I answer this question exactly? Use the P method, PEE. Get to the point, tell me the exact answer. Do not repeat the question. Okay, tell me the point, give an explanation, and then give an example from the text or the study that the question is asking about. Okay. Hi, guys. So, what is the most important part of a study to know? Okay. The methodology of each study is what is the most important part for you to know. So if you're in the Google Classroom and you happen to see that I have index cards, just like this, index cards. Okay, these index cards, on the front of the index cards in the Google Classroom, I wrote down all the methodology. So this includes the aim, the methods, the independent and dependent variable. And when I say methods, I mean, is it a lab experiment? Is it a field experiment? Are there observations, questionnaires, self-reports? Okay. Any independent variables? What are those independent variables? What are the dependent variables? The design of the study. So is this independent groups? Is it repeated measures? Do we have match pairs in here? Okay. You also need to know the sample of the study and the conclusions, which are basically the hypotheses or aims just made into concise statements that say whether or not that we supported or refuted that aim from the beginning. And now listen, results are really, really hard to remember. I mean, if you go into Cohen study, there's a plethora of results. There's all kinds of different numbers and things like that for even Savidra and Silverman. I would try to remember maybe one piece of data from every study, one tiny little thing, whether it's maybe love and asparagus. Maybe you remember the jump in the love group versus the jump in the non-love group. I'm saying jump from the control week 1 to that week 2. Maybe you remember just that number. In Baron Cohen, there's so many numbers that you just need to remember that there's a negative correlation, and you should be able to understand and articulate that you understand the negative correlation and if it's connected to nature or nurture. Okay, so tiny pieces of information like in Milgram, just remember 62% of participants went all the way to 450 volts, killing Mr. Wallace. In Pilyavin, you want to remember that there are that a majority of men were, I think it was 96%. Don't quote me. Everything that I say is from memory. 90, I can look it up. 96%, I think, of men. Here it is. Hold on. Okay, wait. 80% of victims received spontaneous help. Oh. Okay, 62 out of 65 more likely to help the man that was ill. If they were drunk, it was 19 out of 38. All right. Okay, like I said, I have some kids sleeping, so throw some questions up on here, guys. Give me just 1 second. I will be right back. Okay. Let me go through some of these comments. Hi guys, thanks for being so patient. Okay. How do I remember the differences between the approaches? Okay. So cognitive is like a computer system, okay? Computers have no emotions, right? Biological, that has to do with our physiology, our biology, like sweat, stinky sweat and emotions and crying and heart rate and all that kind of crazy stuff. Learning, I always think of dogs and animals. There's going to be a lot of children and operational techniques and Pavlov's dog and Bandura's in learning theory. And then we have social, which think about like social media and your friends. And this is all about how society interacts with one another, and how you interact. One person interacts within a group of people. Because remember, psychology, the difference between psychology and sociology is that psychology is the study of the human being, the personal experience. And when we study social psychology, it's that personal experience within groups, how that individual reacts against groups and things like that, where sociology is the study of groups, okay? And how society and different theories and stuff, that is all centered around groups of people, where psychology is an individual person. Okay, I hope that helped you. Okay, so are all of the 10 pointers just asking about strengths and weaknesses? Okay, so yes, a majority, yes, all of the 10 pointers ask about strengths and weaknesses, or they ask you to evaluate which is strengths and weaknesses. Now, some of these past papers, they have an 8-point discuss question, and then they have a 10-point evaluation question afterwards, okay? Don't get confused. It's basically the same exact thing, except for one little thing, okay? When you discuss something, you're going to tell the strengths. Ooh, I just saw 1111. You're going to tell the strengths and you're going to tell the weaknesses of something, okay? You just have to say, if they want you to discuss the strengths and weaknesses of the methodology of something, then you're only going to talk about things like lab experiment design, samples. If they ask you about the procedure, that's when you can talk about maybe like the controls. You can talk about what like different processes and things that happened in the study that have to do with stooges, and just make sure that if it says methodology, don't talk about ethics. Okay. Ugh, that's a big one. Okay. Anything you talk about ethics, if it says methodology, is not going to be counted. Now, when you're describing something, you're just, when you're discussing something, you're giving this important argument for and against. Okay. Now, they just want you to discuss the strengths and weaknesses in that 8-point question. But the next one can be a 10-point question, and that is always just evaluate. And when you evaluate, they're looking for you to come up with an answer at the end, whether it is a good answer or a bad answer. They want you to tell them, was the study good or was this study bad? And your job, it doesn't matter. There's no clear answer. Okay. I'm going to tell you right now, you can take Pilyavin, which was a horrible study that had, no controls. We weren't able to even talk to our participants. They were naive. There were no ethics involved. You could take that study and convince the reader that it was a good study. But this is what you have to do. You're going to have to supply me with at least 2 to 3 strengths and 2 to 3 weaknesses. And then you're going to have to tell me why those make the study good or bad, and why, what outweighs something else. Okay. Now, when you evaluate, you're discussing the important details. Okay. So it's, like I said before, the strengths and the weaknesses, those details. But in this one, you're judging the overall worth of the study. So it's like you're taking an extra little paragraph at the end and you're saying, okay, based on the fact that I said this was good and this was bad and this was good and this was bad, I'm going to say overall, this study is blah, 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 blah. Okay. So when you're evaluating something, on that last 10-point question or on a strengths and weakness, okay, this is, there's 2 ways you can go about this. Okay. I'm going to tell you both of these ways. And I know you guys are throwing questions up there, and I'm going to try to answer them as the best my ability here. Okay. So, when you are answering those eval questions, the first thing that I would recommend you do is just stick with Grave. Okay. Grave tells me, that there is at least 5 areas that I'm going to think of. And, I write them down on each index card. So I have, like, if you're in the Google Classroom, every study has an index card already created for you. And on the back is Grave of every study. So it's the generalizability, the reliability, the application, the validity, and the ethics of every single study. Now, if I can tell you if I'm basically in the answer, I'm going to tell you whether generalizability was good or bad. And I'm going to give an example of generalizability from the study. Okay. And I'm going to explain why it's good or bad. And I can also maybe even give like a general statement of what generalizability was or the sample. Okay. So I'm counting on giving enough information to get 2 points in generalizability. Okay. Notice that grave is 5 letters. So if I get 2 points in each of those letters, 2 points in the G, 2 in reliability, 2 in application, 2 in validity. If I get 2 in each of those, then theoretically there's 10 points. Now I'm still going to need to like have a little sentence at the end that links and says, overall, Pilyavin was a bad study, because we couldn't recuperate from the ethics, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Now, if you forget one of these graves, okay, another way to answer this is just talk about stuff that happened in the study. Okay. What was good and what was bad, but you just have to explain it and tell them why. Give an example of something. The controls were bad in this. The controls were bad. Here's an example of the controls, and this is why they were bad. So again, we're putting P in here. Point, example, explain. Point, example, explain. Okay. All right, I'm going to move on. What studies are most common on the test? Okay, so you're I'm going to say that I don't believe they're ever going to take Baron Cohen off of this. I've seen one test not have any Milgram. So, see, I didn't do it this year, but a really good way to figure this out is to go to last year's paper and figure out what study that they forgot or what study that they didn't put in, and that they're going to put it in this year. But, study all the studies. Study all of the studies, okay? Yeah, you can evaluate a study by doing 2x2, 2 strengths, 2 weaknesses. And you can I would just do it like this. See? So you can name the strength. A strength of Milgram was a laboratory experiment because it had a lot of controls. And then you would say, in Milgram's study, all the participants experienced a 45-volt shock, and all participants drew for lots, even though they were all teachers. There's like 2 examples in there, but giving that would get you 2 points. Now you were going to give another strength. A strength of Milgram was that there was deception. Okay. All participants thought they were coming to the test for a learning study, but in fact, they were doing a study on obedient behavior. All participants thought they had an equal chance of becoming the teacher or the learner, but in fact, they were all just going to be the teacher. Or you could say something about the Stooges, and that has deception. The reason that was needed was to improve demand characteristics. Then you would go and say a weakness. A weakness of the study was the sampling technique. The sampling technique was a volunteer sample. So within the study, all of our participants had some type of motivation. There was some type of motivational bias by sampling our participants, who happened to all be male, all be between the age of, I can't remember, 30 to 40, 45. Okay. They all got paid like $3.50, which, was a good amount of money back then. So that's just an example. Then you would do one more weakness. Okay. Okay, the activity index for Shakhtar and Singer. Now, prior to the study, they had to get this activity index of what the activities in the euphoric classroom, what those, I guess on a scale, what those looked like for how active they were, right? Because We wanted some type of way or some type of objective way to say, oh, yeah, hula hooping is definitely more active than sitting and doodling, or what is more active, playing basketball with a waste paper basket, or throwing a paper airplane. So basically, it was just a bunch of college students, and they gave them these questionnaires, and the students voted, and they basically created this hierarchy. And I can't remember 100%, but I know like the number 10 was hula hooping and like number 1 was doodling. Okay. So I hope that makes sense to you. Okay. So when it says what the psychology being investigated is, that is talking about the behind the scenes, the background, the theories that are in the study. Okay. So in Pilyavin, we're talking about diffusion of responsibility. We're talking about bystander behavior. In Canley, we're talking about highly memorable emotions that are stored in the amygdala. Okay. In Pepperberg, we're talking about spatial navigation and um, basically the ability to categorize something as same or different in animals other than primates. Savidra and Silverman, we are looking at learning theories of classical conditioning and operant conditioning. And this is basically with phobias. Okay. In Milgram, we are looking at the conflict between the individual consciousness and obedience to authority. Okay, because there is a cognitive dissonance in do no harm versus listen to authority. So when they are both present, what occurs? And actually, in Milgram, what we saw was that our basically our participants, okay, look, if you go Google this, do this after my video, okay? If you just need a sneak peek, if you've never seen any footage from Milgram, just go put it on YouTube, okay? Put Milgram Study, 1963 Milgram Study. It's black and white. Now, what you're going to want to see is basically at the end of each person's trial, okay, basically whatever their trial they were doing, the way that people started to move on after they were like, no, I'm done, I finished. And the stooge would say, no, the study requires you to continue. And they would shake, and they would say, well, what happens to this man if he dies? Like, who's responsible? And the stooge would say, I'm responsible. And as soon as somebody else took the blame, it was like the stooge was like a puppet again. Okay. So just remember that. All right. I'm not going to go over all of the psychology being investigated, but whatever is in the study, if we're talking about false memories, okay, implanting false memories. Andrade is doodling, that's concentration of memory. We were talking about attention versus memory in that one. Okay, social aggression theories and social aggression and social aggression theories in Bandura. Okay. All right, let's make a group on Instagram. I do have an Instagram on it's a psychology 9990 if you're interested. Hey, do you have any tips as to how I can recall the information? I study multiple hours, but I can't recall much. Okay, so the way that you're studying, I'm going to recommend maybe you're going to need to change it, obviously. So I know it's a little scary to change the way you study because you've been doing it your entire time, but you also have to think about this. Has it worked for you all the time? And I found a way that I've used one of these studies to figure out how to study, and I use spatial navigation. And this is the way to do it. So I create charts or visual charts that even have words and pictures on them. And then I put them up in my house on like my cupboards. I put them in my kitchen. I put them in some type of chronological order. Now, what you might want to do for the studies is maybe you pick an area in your house and you do all of the information for the study on one poster board, and you put that poster board somewhere specific in your house, maybe on the sliding glass door, you put it on a certain kitchen cabinet, you put it on a certain door, in one in your bathroom, and I'm going to tell you, you live that way. You literally live that way every single day. And when you go to the cupboard and you get that bowl for your cereal in the morning and you're staring at Milgram and you see the same population number every single day, or you go to the bathroom and you're looking at Pilly Oven and you see that it was a 7.5 seconds that the door shut every time, and you've got those controls memorized because you see it every day, but you're not studying every day. You just see it every day. And this is how spatial navigation works. After you're gone, after you are out of the area, you're not there anymore. Think about when you're trying to navigate somewhere. You can close your eyes and you can literally see the information from where you are. You can like picture yourself getting that bowl of cereal in the morning, and just as much as you know what that cupboard looks like because you go to it every single morning, you're going to remember what that poster board looks like, and you're going to remember certain information on it. Okay, I'm telling you, this really, really works. And we have so much room in our spatial navigation because we don't use it, because we have things like Google Maps that do it for us. So we don't really have to remember how to get anywhere. All right. Okay, that's a trick. If you have trouble differentiating between approaches, reading assumptions on these approaches might help. Okay, will this year's test be hard because of COVID? I have no idea. I'm sorry, guys. How do we answer questions that have to do with similarity and differences between two studies? Okay, so if you were made to one, make sure that you're using correct studies within the approaches. Okay, even if you have to go look at past questions, just know for a majority, I think they do clump the studies kind of together in kind of the same order that the book goes. Okay, don't quote me on that. I don't know if they're going to change that in the future, but I've noticed that it's not so much all over the place. Okay. Now, with similarities and differences, one, pay attention to the command word that is asking of you. Make sure that you use the right studies. Make sure that you use examples from the studies. And then make sure that you use things that are different. So if you're saying study A had laboratory experiments and they were great with controls, make sure that what you're pointing out in the other study is maybe the complete opposite. Okay. Now, or I mean, it could be your similarity or differences, but it could be a similarity. Okay. It could be a similarity or difference, but make sure that they're even. So just know that you're just going to get a point for one similarity, a point for a difference, but it's probably going to be an even number like 4. So you're not going to get a point for 3 similarities. Well, it's similarities and differences, and there's S's on both. So it means they want more than one of both. Okay. So I mean, if you have time, you can give 3 of each, but you need to have at least 2 of each per se, especially if there's an S on the end. I know that sounds really simple, but you have to pay attention to the wording of the questions. Can you please explain the differences between evaluation and strengths and weaknesses? I think I may have done that. So when you do strengths and weaknesses, you're discussing it. You're just talking about the good and the bad, the good and the bad. When you're evaluating something, you basically know that at the end of the day, when you're done the question, you have to tell the reader or whoever's grading, you have to tell them whether or not the study was good or bad. So keep that in mind as you're going through and you're writing about things that happened in the study. Okay, kind of keep a tally. Like, are you doing a lot of good things? Are you doing a lot of bad things? You don't want to like write a bunch of strengths and then say that the study was overall worthless or not applicable or not useful. Okay. And again, the differences have to do with basically the command words: discuss versus evaluate. Okay, differences between validity and reliability. Okay, I have a video on this, guys. All right, so if something is reliable, it just means that you can do the experiment over and over and over and you'll get the same results. Think of your best friend being reliable. They are there for you when you need them. They are there time and time again in a repetitive way. You can always count on them. So think about Baron Cohen's study. The point of this, we had a 1997 version and then a 2001 version. The whole point of creating the 2001 version was to improve the reliability of it. The reliability has to do with things that standardized procedures. So if a study has standardized procedures, it's basically like saying a study has bullet points, or like looking up a DIY video on YouTube and they have step 1 to making slime, do this. Step 2 to making slime, do this. Step 3. Those are standardized procedures. And if a study has standardized procedures, it's reliable because I can follow that recipe over and over and over again, and it should elicit the same exact results. Okay, so it's like following a recipe. A recipe has good reliability because the procedures are standardized for you. It's written in the same way every single time. That's why your mom held on to your great 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 grandmother's recipe, because it works. It's reliable. It works every single time. Okay, now validity has to do with the controls. Um, Internal validity has to do with controls of a study. Now, the controls have to do with things that are going to tell you whether or not the independent variable is causing a change in the dependent variable, which is the measurements. Okay, so all right, how is this all related? Now, I'm going to quickly go over external validity because it's easier concept, and I think you can get away in the entire study without even mentioning the word internal validity, and you can still talk about the controls. So, external validity is the ecological validity of a study, and it's very, very easy for you to say that a study is going to be low in ecological validity if it's a lab experiment versus a field experiment. Okay, and ecological validity has to do with the surroundings. Is the environment likely to occur in a real life setting? Okay, so we're not going to do a study on lawnmowers and test them on a gym floor, okay, for speed, because lawnmowers, they ride on grass, they don't ride on wood. So that would have low ecological validity. But if we were out in a field, even on the football field, and we did it, that would have high ecological validity. Now, internal validity has to do with the controls of the study. Think about Dement and Kleitman, where everyone had to report at 7 p.m. You couldn't have any caffeine or alcohol. Those controls are making us say, okay, it wasn't the caffeine or alcohol that caused them to dream or enter REM, because we didn't allow them to do that. So we know it's not that. Okay. So just think about a valid ID. Is someone going to take you seriously and say, hey, is this really you, a valid ID without your signature on it? Or maybe they need your a valid ID with your signature and your own signature to validate something, to validate that this is you. Okay. Now, in a study, we want to say, hey, yes, it is the introduction of the phrase "you loved asparagus as a kid" that caused a change in the dependent variable, which that change was just saying that the participants now liked asparagus when they didn't say it before. Okay, we know that nothing else happened in their lives in this readout that we gave them after we had them do all those questionnaires. We gave everyone that little I forgot exactly what it was called, but that little portfolio page. And we said to them, either group A, you loved asparagus as a kid, group B, we didn't even mention anything about asparagus. And that's all we did. Okay. That's the only thing that we did in that study. So just by implementing that one tiny phrase, we know that that phrase is what caused the change in the independent variable to occur. And it wasn't something, I don't know, completely different. Okay. I hope I answered that for you. All right. Validity refers to how the data was collected. No, that is incorrect. I'm sorry. Validity, how well the study measures what maintain to measure high controls, confound variables. Okay, so chorus nerd, you are correct. Savino, unfortunately, your validity refers to how the data was collected. Unless you can explain that a little bit differently, when you say things like questionnaire observations, that is methods. Okay. But you definitely got reliability right on that one. Okay. All right. Rashina, check my email. In the AICE psychology, I'll be able to check it after this. How many points do you need to pass? You know, I didn't look at the threshold, but this is psychologically speaking. If you go in thinking that there is a threshold that you have to pass, okay, this is proven in psychology, guys, okay. I study statistics of test taking. If you go in with a predetermined number, if you say to yourself, I only need a 28 to pass, okay, you're going to get less than 28. And that's because one, we kind of lose track. Two, we overestimate our own intelligence at times. So if this is 60 points, what I'm going to tell you is that you need to aim for a hardcore 45 points. And you're like, that's a lot. But look, I know you're going to get less than 40. Okay. And that's okay. And that's still passing. But remember, there's a paper too. Okay. You could get significantly less, but in your head, I just want you to try to count at least to 40 points. Okay. By you saying, yes, I got 40 points here. And remember, you're going to go to the last point, the last questions first, and do the big questions first. Okay. Because people are overwriting on the 2-point questions and they're getting spacey and they're wasting time. You should spend about a minute and a half per point. So if it's a 10-point question, give yourself 15 minutes. If it's an 8-point question and that 10-point question, give yourself 30 minutes to do 18 points. Okay, that's plenty of time. Plenty of time. And you have a whole hour to finish the test. Okay. Can you please explain the procedure of Laney? I get confused between the different experiments. Okay, so here's a couple, yes, differences. Let me get my card up. But honestly, the difference is the samples were both college student samples. Okay, you're not going to have to answer how many males and females were in Laney's samples. Okay, I'm telling you this now. It's 2 different universities, and it's college students. Now, in the first study, we have deception because our participants did not know the aim of the study. They were not aware of the true aim. In Laney, we had them take, let me see. So the first sample was from California, and let's see, I think it was Washington. Okay, so in Laney, we had the same food history inventory, restaurant questionnaire. We had the food preference questionnaire. We had the food cost questionnaire, memory and belief questionnaire. Now we had those in both experiment 1 and experiment 2. Okay. Now our participants took the test. Okay, they were called 2 weeks. They were called to come back 2 weeks later, and then basically told whether or not they liked asparagus as a kid. Now, in the second one, they didn't use deception. They told the participants exactly what was going to happen, and they just they did the same questionnaires. They called the participants back, told them whether or not they liked asparagus as a kid, and instead of just doing the questionnaires again to see if their scores raised, they just introduced a visual slideshow that had, come on, how many slides? Okay, I don't have 100% number on the slides right now, but it had slides of food, pictures of food, and participants were basically asked to number or rate on a scale different types of questions, like how appetizing it was, if they thought like a beginner or an intermediate or an expert photographer may have taken the picture. And the reason for that is because, if you think an image looks really, really, really good, maybe you think it looks satisfying, maybe you are more attracted to it. Okay. So really the only difference is in Laney 1, we have deception. We didn't give full informed consent because there's some deception. And in the second part of the experiment, or the second experiment, we have the introduction of a slideshow of food. Now, if you are asked, how could you improve Laney's study? I love this question about Laney, because you know what I would do to make this study have more ecological validity, because it does not have good ecological validity. Laney's study is a lab experiment, and we're talking about eating food, right? So how do we really know if people would choose food? We don't. They're just saying that they would on a questionnaire. So what if they just really remember that phrase and it stands out in their mind because maybe they don't eat asparagus and it really was something like, oh, wow, holy cow, like I didn't know that about myself. So that something new sticks in your head longer. Now, what if after the study was done, they let everybody go in a cafeteria and they had asparagus in like a buffet, and they actually went around to see who picked asparagus as a food? If they were able to manipulate the choices of participants right then and there in their faces, then we would have been able to increase the ecological validity of Laney's study. Okay, moving on. All right. I am skipping through. I'm glad you guys are getting to know each other a little bit. I'm so sorry that psychology is stressing you out. I love psychology. I hope that I can bring and shed some light. Oh my gosh, you had a panic attack. Just take a deep breath, okay? Now, you can do this. All right, any more studies? There definitely is in the Google Classroom. There's definitely a place you can access in each of the studies listed on the side. They each have an index card like this, and that has a grave on the back for every single study. Okay. All right, I'm going to scroll down here. Application of everyday life for all the studies. In a single line. I did have that. If I can't find it right away, I will move on. You know what? All right, guys. So what I usually have my students do is I've had my students create their own board games, okay? And I have questions from each one of the groups, okay? So I have biological, I have cognitive, I have learning social, I have I have statistics, I have research methods. Okay. Here we go. I'm just going to randomly start to pick some cards. All right, guys. So listen up. If you don't know the answer to these, write it down. Okay. You never know. You could be here, and this could be why you're here, because you hear something that you've never heard before and you hear it on your exam. All right. So you're going to have to listen up right now. Okay. Here we go, guys. And this is just going to be some random stuff, whatever I feel, whatever my intuition guides me to do. Okay. Here we go. All right, you guys, order effect. Okay. This is where performance in one condition of an experiment is affected by performance in another condition of an experiment. This occurs in repeated measures designs of experiments in particular. So anytime a study has repeated measures designs, okay, a negative is going to be order effect. Now we have, let's see, Dement and Kleitman is a repeated measures design, and that's kind of why we had multiple nights of sleeping, okay? Okay. This one is from Canley, okay? What were participants shown after each scene in Canley and for how long? All right, so participants were shown a fixation cross. Remember, they had to look right at that little cross. It's kind of like when you're getting an x-ray, there's like a little cross. They had to stare right at that for 12.96 seconds. Awesome. Yeah, you guys can answer on here. That's cool. You can definitely answer on here. Okay, I'll try to pause a little bit. All right, so what is confirmation bias? Confirmation bias. All right. All right, guys. So keep writing. Confirmation bias. It's the tendency to look up or only pay attention to information that confirms your own belief and ignores all other things. So as humans, we technically do this a lot when we go to Google something. Okay, if we think something's correct and we go to Google it, and we tend to just kind of pick and choose what we want, we throw away what we don't want or what doesn't agree with us. Okay, this is really important because this is what experimenter biases are. The experimenter is the one who's coming up with the study, and they have an idea of what they're going to see, already have an idea. Okay, so it's kind of like a confirmation bias that exists, and this is not good to have in psychology. All right, what is the sampling method of Yamamoto? And if you know what the sample is and how many, write that into. Awesome job, guys. So this was an opportunity sample. We have 5 chimpanzees, okay? And they were at the Kyoto University. It was a research institute. It was mother-child pairs, okay? So I know that's 6 of them, and I remember their names because it's like CAP. It was like Cleo and Chloe, Ayumu and AI and Paul and Pon. Ooh, I can't believe I remembered those. Okay, now Cleo did not, who is the mother of Chloe, did not do the condition with the tools. Okay, so that's why there's only 5 participants, because we only ever measured the participant that was using the tools. We didn't measure the person, or we didn't measure the participant that was using the stick to get the juice. Okay. You don't, oh, thank you. You don't have to know their names, but I would know Ayumu. Know the name Ayumu. Ayumu. Know that name because that is the only chimpanzee in the cannot see condition that moved the stuff out of the way so that she could see what was going on. She was that smart. So we technically, the data from that round we put in the can see condition, but that is a piece of information that you might want to know. Okay. You don't need to know, you need to know all 7 tools because I've seen it on an exam. They've had you list at least 5, and each one that you can think of is a point. Okay. And know the 2 tools that you needed, the stick and the straw. And there were 24 trials that needed the stick and 24 trials that needed the straw. Okay. And remember, we did an ABA design. So we did a can see condition, then we did a cannot see condition, and then we went back with a few more chimpanzees and did another can see condition just to make sure. All right. Brush, chain, stick, straw. Let's see. Okay, remember the familiarization phase of Yamamoto, okay? This consisted of 8 5-minute trials. No tasks were required from the chimpanzees. They could just hang out with the tools. And 5% of the chimpanzees actually passed tools through the hole while they were doing this familiarization phase. Okay? So if you didn't know about that, that's why you're here. All right, anything else? Okay, let's move on. Let's go to name the 5 questionnaires used in Laney in the first session of the experiment. I'll name them all. You guys just name one. Name one of the questionnaires used in Laney. Yep, we have the food history questionnaire, the food restaurant questionnaire, the food history inventory, restaurant questionnaire. Awesome. Good job. MBQ, the memory and belief questionnaire. Awesome. Good job, guys. Okay, here we go. Moving on. Name one weakness of a natural experiment. One weakness of a natural experiment. Remember, natural means that the independent variable exists naturally. Let me see a few answers and then I'll. Awesome. Okay, what do you mean by abbreviations? For the questionnaires, I'm going to say yes, you can use. I think they're going to accept abbreviations for the questionnaires. Yes. Okay, awesome. Good job, guys. Experimenters have low controls over the manipulation of the independent variable. Repeated measures cannot always be used with natural independent variables like hair color. Okay, so if you're doing a study on hair color, you're not going to go and dye people's hair to see if it changes their memory. Okay, you're going to find people with natural brown hair or natural blonde hair. Okay. Why would we use unstructured interviews instead of structured interviews? Why would we use unstructured interviews instead of structured interviews? All right. Yes, they're flexible, very much so. So unstructured interviews in particular can give rich and meaningful and descriptive detail. Yep, it can also make the participant, yes, very much so relaxed. So, it doesn't seem like you're reading from a script. They can give more details about their attitudes, beliefs, feelings, emotions. In something that is unstructured, you're just going the next question is basically based off of what your participant said previously. So it's more comfortable. You might get better details. Okay. You might get more details than you ever expected. Okay. Instead of sticking to a structure that doesn't enable you to get qualitative data. Awesome. Thanks for coming in there. Good point. All right, guys. What is external validity? External validity. Listen, the reason I'm asking you these types of questions because they're going to ask you these questions is as it relates to the studies. So if you don't know what external validity is, how are you going to evaluate it according to Milgram Study? Okay. External validity is ecological validity. Just like internal validity has to do with the controls, external validity has to do, yes, natural environment. Something is likely to happen in a natural environment. Something's ecological validity. So it's the extent to which a study's results or the data that is gathered, whether or not we can apply and generalize that to these natural settings that occur. Okay. So, like I had said before, if you're testing lawnmowers, you're not going to test them out on a wooden gym floor. You're going to want to test them out on grass. Okay. Have higher external validity. All right. Let's go through some more studies. All right, guys. Which cognitive, behavioral, social, or learning, which group do you need the most work on? Put it in there now, and I will start asking the majority of questions from that group. There's all kinds of different validity. Internal validity has to do with the controls of a study. I said it previously in this video, so if you missed it, go back and rewatch it. Okay, I'm seeing a lot of cognitive. A lot of cognitive. Okay, let's do cognitive. I see it. So Shakhtar and Singer, Dement and Kleitman. Okay, and then we'll do learning. Okay. I had learning in my hand. Okay, we'll do cognitive and learning. We'll go back and forth. Okay, here we go. I might go a little bit quicker. Okay. So, what kind of dreams did participants report in Dement and Kleitman? What type of dreams for that third aim? You guys remember that third aim? So, climbing up a series of ladders, looking up and down as they climbed, standing at the bottom of a cliff, operating a hoist, and looking up at the climbers, up and down at the hoist machine. In only instances of horizontal eye movement, the dreamers were watching two people throwing tomatoes at each other. People were playing basketball if they were looking up and down. Good. Awesome. Just read that one. Okay. All right. Next, Shakhtar and Singer. So state one conclusion from Shakhtar and Singer. One conclusion. All right, I'm just going to read these because they're in depth, okay? When participants had explanations for arousal, they did not label the state with alternative information. That was one conclusion. Those who were injected and told exactly what they would feel and why did not show high levels of that emotion. So those who were injected and said you were going to feel irritable, they didn't show irritation. They were relaxed and chill. But those who were told they would be the opposite, they would be relaxed and chill, they showed the highest amount of emotion. There are two factors involved in our experiences of emotion: our psychological arousal or state, and the information or cognitions that help us to understand the behavior we feel. So that is saying that this two-factor theory of emotion exists, and that when we don't have a reason for feeling the way that we do, we look to our internal environment at the same exact time that we are feeling the emotion. Awesome. Oh my gosh, I am in biological. Oh, sorry guys. It's 10:30. It's 10:30 p.m. here. Okay, I'm so sorry. Oh, okay. Laney, Andrade, Baron Cohen. Okay, here we go. I'm so sorry, guys. Those who were told that they were going to be relaxed felt more aroused. They didn't report it, they showed it. Remember that we had two ways of measuring. They had self-reports where they said how they were feeling in Shakhtar and Singer. And 7:30 a.m. Whew. It's already the 26th there, huh? And then there were people behind the one-way mirror that we're observing. So in the anger classroom, remember this. Those who were given the shot and told that they were going to be angry, on the self-report, they, out of all the groups, they said they were the angriest. So they reported like 9s and 10s. But those who were told that they wouldn't have any symptoms at all, those people said they were the calmest, but they displayed the most angry behavior. And just know that this was a double-blind study. So our observers behind the one-way mirror, they did not know that who was in what group. So this was all done completely blind. All right. This is why we proved this theory, to kind of prove the theory. It's hard to prove a theory. Okay. Oh, all right. State the hypothesis of Laney. All right, we're in cognitive now. Cognitive. State the hypothesis of Laney. Oh my gosh, you guys. Ooh. Early, late, studying last minute. I'm here with you guys. I'm here for you guys. All right, in Laney, a hypothesis was to manipulate, the manipulated subjects will be, the manipulated subjects will be appetized when they see a photograph of asparagus. That is in hypothesis number 2. Remember when we saw, yes, false memories can be implanted. And in fact, a majority of our memories are false memories. Anytime that we retrieve a memory, it changes. We add detail, we leave detail out, we change anyway. So a majority of what we perceive memories to be are not completely 100% true memories. Okay? That's because through our lives, we've seen pictures, we've had other people tell us their perspectives and things like that. Actually, the truest memories of yours are the ones that are the weakest and the hardest to remember. We also have suppressed and repressed. Okay? Okay. Describe the AICE test used in Baron-Cohen. Describe the AICE test. There's a lot of different things that you can say to describe the AICE test. Et al. Means and everyone else. So in psychology and studies, if there's more than 3 researchers, we say the 3. If there's more than 3, we say et al. Sometimes if there's at least 3 of them. So it's like saying and all the rest. Okay, just to let you guys know. Awesome. There were 36 sets of eyes. There were 4 word choices. Awesome job. Black and white. Yep. Good job. 36 black and white images, 4 answers. Yes. 3 foils. Good job, guys. 36 pictures. Yes. There were 40, and then last minute we took 4 out. Okay. Perfect. Okay, guys. Good job. Okay. Tell me what the dependent variable of Laney was. They were both the same in both experiments. Guys, still with me? Laney. What was the dependent variable? So yes, it was the scores on the 5 questionnaires. It was the scores on the 5 questionnaires if the participants liked asparagus or not. Okay, because we weren't really scoring everything else. It was just whether like they liked asparagus. Awesome. Okay. So what was given to participants in the Andrade study for the group that was doodling? They were given two things. So on Andrade, awesome. They were given a pencil and an A4 paper, which is just a name of a size of a piece of paper. It's just the name of a size of a piece of paper. Okay. With 10 shapes, which were circles and squares. Okay. Yep. An A4 paper, alternating rows, shapes. Yep. Circles and squares. Good. Okay, so state the research methods and the design of Baron-Cohen. Research methods and the design. I want you to say the research methods first. The methods of Baron-Cohen, then the design. Baron-Cohen is theory of mind. Autism theory of mind. Okay, you are all right. Nobody's wrong yet. We have a natural lab experiment. Yes, we have independent groups. We also have a matched pairs group. I didn't see anyone say that, but we have a matched pairs group. Remember, we have a matched pairs group for IQ, which was around 115, 116. Lab experiment with questionnaires, quasi, awesome. All right, this just means that we could not control the variable. Our participants were either autistic or they were not, and they came to us that way. Okay, this was a lab experiment. Okay, let's think about Laney. Let's do the same for Laney. What was the research methods and what was the design of Laney's experiment? Laney, asparagus. Yeah, so we have a lab experiment with independent groups. Good job, guys. Also know that we had self-reports in there. So self-reports, saying that there's questionnaires, self-reports, that's part of the methods. Okay, so I don't know if you guys remember this or not. You could throw some Hail Marys out there, but I would like for you to try and list 6 basic emotions that were part of Baron-Cohen's study. Okay, part of those 36 images, what were 6 of the basic emotions? Okay, and if you don't know it, I want you to just try to say 6 basic emotions. Okay, let's use our smarts because even if we don't know all the studies, we can just try to throw some Hail Marys out there, right? I'm going to say sad, sad and happy, angry, yes. Sad, happy, angry, awesome. We have afraid, disgust, and surprised. So sad, happy, angry, afraid, disgust, surprise. Good. So just remember, those are very common. Good job. All right, Kara. Awesome. Good job, Abby. Good job, guys. Yeah. All right. So I just happened to pick this up. So I know this is learning, but I feel like we need to talk about Bandura. So what were some ethical concerns with Bandura's study? There are some ethical concerns with Bandura's study. Okay, if you remember any of them, shout them out right now. Any ethical concerns with Bandura's study? Children, yes. Bandura was social aggression, social learning, had to do with the Bobo doll. Psychological harm. Good, guys. Protection. Okay. So you can keep going. Here we go. Participants were children. There was no debriefing. There's possible long-term effects because we are showing these children how to behave in an aggressive way. Let's see. Children were observers of aggressive behavior. They didn't get informed consent. They didn't have the right to withdraw. All this stuff, you guys. Awesome. Whew. Okay. We got about an hour in here. I have to cut this. I got to head to bed. But I'm going to continue to try to get a paper 2 content out to you, and then do another live just like I am now for you for paper 2. Okay. So sorry, guys. So sorry. I'm so exhausted. I have 5 kids, guys. Okay. Of my own. Last minute advice. All I have to tell you, give yourself. Yeah, I can. Oh, if you guys don't have the exam, I can try to do another one tomorrow. Okay. Yes, Google Classroom is still available. It is a $25 donation. All the information is in the Google, in Gmail. So apsychology9990@gmail.com. You send an email, you'll get an email back with all that information on that. I can try to do another one tomorrow. Okay, the exam is Tuesday. Okay, I didn't know if the exam was tomorrow. But I can try to set up and do another one. So guys, come ready with your questions. Okay, do some studying. Let me know where you need help right away. And we're going to jump into some more questions. Also, so I have some Kahoots. I have Kahoots if you guys like to do quizzes. It's I don't have it right here. I'll have to link it in this video after it goes up on my site. In a few other videos, I've posted some of my Kahoots on there. Okay. What time tomorrow? It'll probably be around the same time. It'll probably be around 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, somewhere around there. Okay. Yeah, come with your questions, come prepared. Try to study grave, okay, guys? If you can study grave of that is it. Study grave of every study. You will know the generalizability. It will make you understand the sample. By studying the reliability, it will make you have to understand the standardized procedures of the studies, okay? By knowing how to apply it, it will make you know the results. By understanding the validity, you'll have to know the controls of, did I say that? The controls, or you'll have to know if it was lab or field, okay? And the ethics. So in the next day, try to get that together. And, if we must, maybe tomorrow we'll just go over all grave of all the studies, okay? Whew. You guys are welcome. But help me out, do some studying, and then get some stuff together. Like I said, we can go over individual, we can just do random questions from individual approaches, or we can do particular to grave, which I'm thinking a little bit more grave. Okay. Yeah, let's do grave. Okay. I will be ready to do grave. I will be here around 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Okay. Should we write the application in the strengths? Yeah, because if a study is useful, a strength to a study being useful is that it's going to increase society, it's going to increase psychology as a subject, okay? Anything that's going to increase academics or help us understand human behavior things like that. We want a study to be useful, and it's only going to be useful if the other things kind of happen along with it, right? I mean, if we didn't really find anything out, it's not going to be useful. Okay. Okay. Tomorrow, grave, same time-ish, same place. I'll see you there. Tell your friends, all right? I had about 44 of you. I've got over 1,000 subscribers. I know there's more of you that need my help. Tell your friends, all right? See you guys. Good night. Go to bed. You need to go to sleep and then eat good breakfast in the morning. Okay? Have a good day at school.